Hey guys, so today we're going to continue working on the reading section. Yesterday we started working on the reading section. We took a look at the structure of the reading, the format, the timing. Also we said that there were 10 different types of questions in the reading part, and I remember that we started looking at one type of question from the reading, right, which was detailed questions. And if you guys remember, we're working on this set officially published by the ETS, which was about the Tehuacan's development, right? This city in Mexico and how they developed, how they grew, the factors that led to the development of the city. And we were answering some questions to see the different question types and strategies to answer them. So we're going to continue looking or going over the different question types and the strategies to answer them. Okay, guys? Do you have any questions before we start today's class?
No, miss.
Okay, perfect. So we saw detailed questions yesterday. Let's see what else we have. Okay, the next type of question that we're going to see is called except type of question. Okay, these are called except not questions. And basically, they are the same as detailed questions, but they're going to be asking you for information that wasn't mentioned in the text. So it's kind of like the opposite of what you had in detailed questions. In this case, they won't be asking for information that is explicitly said or mentioned in the text, but instead they will ask for information that wasn't mentioned, that wasn't there, or that's not true. So what you have to do in order to come to the right answer is eliminate the options that were mentioned, right? It makes sense. They're asking for things that were not in the text, so you need to eliminate the things that were in order to get to the one that wasn't. So we're going to see this with an example. We're going to continue working on the same passage on Teotihuacan. And this time we'll be answering question 3, which is the except question of the set. So Erasmo, please, could you read this question 3?
Which of the following is not mentioned in paragraph 2 as a main factor in the development of Teotihuacan?
Yes, Erasmo. So I will give you guys 1 or 2 minutes to try to answer this question first. Let me know what you think, and then we'll try it with me. Okay, and I'll give you some tips. I'll tell you the strategies for this question. But first, let's try to see it yourselves. So I'll give you guys some time. Let me know what you think. You guys, so what would you say the answer is in this case?
Letter C, maybe?
All right, do you all agree?
Yes.
Yes, sí.
Okay, that's perfect. So yes, you guys are right. Well done. So the way to go on this question is exactly the same as what we did yesterday. First of all, you read the question, you make sure that you understand it very well, and then you look for the main words, for the keywords in the question. In this case, they're asking for what is not mentioned as a main factor in the development of the Tehuacan. So in this case, they're asking for factors in the development of the Tehuacan. Those are probably going to be the keywords. But not only that, but they're asking for the main factors, right? And I guess that's an important thing. These are words called modifiers. And I think we were talking about these yesterday, right? Because it's not the same to say main factors, for example, than to saying other factors or secondary factors, right? So you identify the keywords, you look for them in the text or their synonyms. So maybe you don't have factors, but you have reasons, or instead of development, you have growth. But the important thing is that you look for these words or their synonyms in the text. And they're here, right? How did this tremendous development take place? Why did it happen? Among the main factors are, so they're asking for what not a main factor. And as I was telling you before, the only way to answer this question is by eliminating options. So in order to get to the one that is not a main factor, you need to first eliminate the ones that are mentioned as main factors. So you kind of turn the question around and you ask yourself, what are the main factors in Tehuacan's development? What are those? And we start reading, they say the first one is Tehuacan's geographic location on a natural trade route to the south and east of the Valley of Mexico. Once that you have found one of those, because you always have to have 3 correct, right? There's always going to be 3 that were mentioned and only one that wasn't. So in this case, we already have one, Tehuacan's geographic location. Which option talks about that, geographic location?
B.
Exactly. The option D says Tehuacan's location on the natural trade route. Now, once that you found that, it's also really, really important that you guys check and double check that it's correct, that everything is right. Because maybe, and this is another very common trap for these questions, maybe option D isn't like that. Maybe option D says Tehuacan's location on natural trade route, and maybe it says to the west of the Valley of Mexico. That's a very common trap. They include incorrect information for you to fall into. If you're doing this if you're in a hurry and you want to do this really fast, then maybe you're not going to read everything. You're going to skip the details. So it's important that you guys read everything and you make sure that what you're eliminating is actually mentioned the way it is. In this case, it's correct, so we can eliminate option D. Then another factor that's mentioned as a main factor in the development of the city is the obsidian resources in the Teotihuacan Valley itself. What option talks about that?
A.
The A.
Again, you make sure that it's correct. In this case, it is, so no problem there. And finally, we have the valley's potential for extensive irrigation, which, as you probably noticed, is B. So all of those are mentioned. The only one that's not is option C. That's the correct choice. And as I told you, it's important that you guys, once that you found the answer, that you stop reading so you don't get confused. Because if you don't consider that they are now mentioning other factors and not main factors like the question asks, you may continue reading and you may get confused because maybe they later talk about volcanic inactivity. But that's not a main factor, right? We're looking for main factors, which are these, the ones that we underlined. We're not looking for the other factors. Right, so careful with those traps. And I would say this question is pretty simple compared to the others. Similar to the detailed questions, but it's like an inversion of detailed questions. Is that okay? Do you guys have any questions?
Yes, miss, it's okay.
All right, thank you. So, our next question is not as simple or as easy as the other ones because it's a little bit more subjective. It requires more thought. This question is called inference questions, all right? And in these questions, they won't be asking about information that is explicitly said, explicitly mentioned in the text anymore. But instead, they will ask about implied information that you can infer. Does anyone know what inference means or what it means to infer something?
Is to obtain one idea in base of other idea.
Exactly. Thank you, Rosario. That's great. So yes, to make an inference, to infer something, basically means, as Rosario says, to obtain one idea, to draw a conclusion based on something else, right? Based on another idea. So I say something, you're gonna interpret what I say. You're gonna draw your own conclusion based on what I said. So when you make inferences, you guys need to have evidence. You can't just like create your or draw your own conclusions based on nothing, right? They have to be based on evidence from the text. However, that evidence is gonna be found in the text in an, I would say maybe implicit way, because it's not directly mentioned. So for example, I don't know, if they say something like, let's say, a psychologist called, I don't know, a psychologist called Leonardo, I don't know, Leonardo is now working on this project, for example. That's the information that you have in the text. That's what is being explicitly said in the text. So based on that information, you can draw certain inferences. For example, the first inference that you can draw is that this Leonardo works constantly with people, right? That's an inference that you guys are drawing. How are you guys drawing that conclusion? Because you have the information that that person is a psychologist. So you know that psychologists work with people, so you can infer that Leonardo constantly works with people, right? So that's kind of how you have to do it like here. They are not gonna explicitly say Leonardo works constantly with people, and then you have to just choose that option. Not the way that we had in detailed questions. So it's not going to be explicit information, it's going to be implied information, things that are suggested, things that you can infer based on the text. Okay, guys? How do you know that you're dealing with an inference question? Because of how it's phrased. It's always going to start with something like what can be inferred, what can be suggested, or what is suggested. If you guys see those words, inferred or suggested, you know you're dealing with an inference question. So you already should know what to do. Okay, guys? So we'll talk about the strategies and everything here, but first I want you guys to give it a try. So please, Alejandro, can you read the question 4?
Okay, Miss, what can be inferred from paragraph 3 about who quick call prior to 200 BC?
Okay, thank you so much, Alejandro. So please give it a try. Let me know what you think. We'll talk about what to do when we're done. Okay, guys, so what do you think? Which option would you choose?
Probably is the DMIS. Its economy relied heavily on agriculture.
Okay. All right, Rosario, thanks. Option D, Rosario says. Anyone else?
I said D2.
Okay, perfect. What about the rest? Okay, guys. Now, can anyone tell me why? Why would option D be the one?
Because in the Texas, much of its agricultural land covered by lava, and then that Quiquilco was eliminated as a potential rival. So it was a grand damage about that. So
Okay, Rosario, great. Thank you so much. That makes a lot of sense. So yes, you guys are correct. Option D is the correct one. Now, what steps do you have to follow when you answer these questions? First thing is you need to understand that in order for you to draw any inferences, to draw any conclusions about, let's say they're asking here about Quiquilco prior to this time, before making any inferences, you guys need to know what information you have about that, right? So before drawing any conclusions, you're gonna read and you're gonna search for information about Quiquilco prior to this date. So it works the same way. You look for the keywords, probably Quiquilco 300 BC, and then you search for those keywords in the text. So you look for Quiquilco prior to 200 BC, Quiquilco again, right? That's everything that we have. Okay. And then you start reading around the keywords. So prior to 200 BC, a number of relatively small centers coexisted in and near the Valley of Mexico. Does that say anything about Quiquilco prior to 200 BC? Not yet, right? And now they say we don't know anything about this. Then they say around this time, the largest of these centers, Quiquilco. Okay, good. So the first thing that we know about Quiquilco is that it was the largest of these centers that coexisted in and near the Valley of Mexico. That's the first thing that we know about Quiquilco. You know, we know that Quiquilco was the largest of those centers that coexisted either inside the Valley of Mexico or near the Valley of Mexico. We don't know where, yeah, right? We don't know where, if it was inside or outside or near the Valley of Mexico. But we know that it was the largest of those centers. What else do we know? Then they say Quiquilco was seriously affected by a volcanic eruption. Okay, that's the second thing that we know. We know that they were seriously affected by a volcanic eruption that, as Rosario says, covered their agricultural land with lava, right? So that's the second thing that we know, that there was a volcanic eruption that destroyed their agricultural land, right? And what else? They say with Quiquilco eliminated as a potential rival, any of one of a number of relatively modest towns might have emerged, okay? So the last thing that we know about Quiquilco, as Rosario said, is that it was eliminated as a potential rival. So it wasn't, Quiquilco lost all its power, right? They were eliminated as a rival. They weren't the largest of the centers anymore. And then they start talking about the Tehuacan and everything else, so we don't have to read any more than that. That's all the information we know. First, we know that it was the largest of those centers that coexisted either in or near the Valley of Mexico. Second, we know there was a volcanic eruption in Quiquilco that damaged their agricultural land. And finally, we know that they were eliminated as a rival. Those are the three only things that we know about Quiquilco prior to this time. So we start going over the options now, and we find the one that makes more sense according to what we know of Quiquilco so far. Option A says it was a fairly small city until that date. Probably not, right? Because we know that they were the largest of those centers, so they weren't a small city. And when they say until that date, that means that something happened after that date, but it wasn't like that, right? We don't know what happened after 1200 BC. So it's not option A. We don't have enough information to say that. Option B says it was located outside the Valley of Mexico. And that kind of brings me back to the first thing that we know about Quiquilco, which was that it was located probably in or maybe near the Valley of Mexico, right? That's the first thing that we know. It was here, in, or near the Valley of Mexico. but we don't know where. How do we know that it was outside, that it was near, and that it wasn't inside the Valley of Mexico? We don't know, right? And there's nothing that says, or nothing that can make us think that they were near the Valley of Mexico and not in the Valley of Mexico. There's not enough information to prove this. So we don't know where they were located. Now, option C says it emerged rapidly as an economical and political center. This is probably as I was telling you, this is one of the traps in the reading, because they put words and phrases that are gonna sound familiar to you that you guys have read the text, because they talk about something like that, right? Leading economic and political power. So they're gonna include phrases and words that will sound familiar so that you're tempted to choose them. But if you think about it, when they say that, they are talking about other towns. They say Cuicuilco was eliminated as a rival, so any one of a number of relatively modest towns, so other towns, might have emerged as a leading economic and political power. So they are not talking about Cuicuilco, they're talking about other towns. So we can say that Cuicuilco emerged rapidly. And again, how do we know that they emerged rapidly? Like, there's nothing that can make us believe that they emerged rapidly, right? Not enough information to prove that. We know that they were a political and economical center, probably, but we have no idea how they emerged. So it's not option C. Just by eliminating options, we can conclude that it's option D, but even without eliminating options, if you just read them all, you will be able to understand that it's the one that makes more sense. Because as Rosario says, the things that we know about Cuicuilco was they were a large city, their agricultural land was damaged, was greatly damaged, and after that, they were eliminated as a rival. So something must have happened there. And what happened is that they relied heavily on agriculture. They depended. Their economy depended on agriculture. And that basically means that when their agricultural land was damaged, was destroyed, they obviously lost all power because they relied on agriculture. So it's definitely the one that fits the context, that fits the information, is the one that can be supported with evidence from the text, and the one that makes sense. What I mean? So that's the process for this type of question. You read a question, you look for the keywords, you find the keywords in the text, you start reading. Before drawing any conclusions, you need to find the actual information that is mentioned in the text. Once that you have found that information, you start reading and going over the options to see the one that makes the most sense. Okay, guys, and in this case, as you guys said, it's option D. So, is this okay? Is this clear? Any questions?
It's okay, Miss.
Okay, guys, great. Now, our next questions are called purpose questions. And as the name says, they're going to be asking you for the purpose or the reason behind the author's choices. So they're going to ask about why the author, that means the person who wrote the text, talked or mentioned something or discussed something or used one word, used one quote, used one phrase, used one sentence, used one example. So they're going to ask about the reason of things. So for example, you can have, why does the author use the word purpose? Why does the author talk about this? Why does the author use this quote? Why does the author, I don't know, discuss this problem, for example? They will ask about the reason why the author does something. They could ask you about the purpose of a word. So what is that word doing there? What's the purpose of the word? They can ask you about the function of a sentence. So why is that sentence there? Or of an idea, of a phrase, or maybe the purpose of an entire paragraph. Why is that paragraph there? What's the purpose of the paragraph? So in all cases, no matter what they ask you for, what you guys need to do is always understand the main idea of the paragraph as a whole. You need to understand the main idea of the paragraph they're asking about. If you guys understand very well the main idea, then you're halfway done. It becomes really easy to answer this question. Okay, so let's see this with an example as well. We're going to be answering now questions 8. Maybe Pamela, can you please read question 8 for us?
And yes, in the paragraph 6, the author discusses the Tribune Obsidian operation in order to.
Thank you, Pamela. So they're asking for why, right? Why does the author discuss the Tribune Obsidian operation? In order to is a synonym of because. So why does the author discuss this Tribune Obsidian operation? I'll give you guys 1 or 2 minutes to try to find out, and then we'll see. Okay, so what would you say?
Letter A.
Okay. Do you all agree?
Probably the letter C.
Yes, maybe
Illustrate
C.
how several factors influence each other to make Teotihuacan a powerful and wealthy city.
Okay. All right, so let's see. So as I was telling you, what you guys have to do here, first thing and the most important thing is to understand the main idea of the entire paragraph. So what is this paragraph about? Can anyone tell me, or at least can you maybe point me out to one sentence or one phrase that you think summarizes the main idea of the paragraph?
All this led to increased wealth, which in turn would attract more immigrants to Teotihuacan, probably.
Okay. All this led to increased wealth. I think, yes, in a way, but is that the main idea of the entire paragraph? That everything led to increased wealth in the city? What is all of this? What is all that?
About obsidian mining.
Okay. Obsidian mining, but they also talk about obsidian tools, traders, markets, the elite, labor force, irrigation works, the population growth. So in this case, if you guys read the first sentence, it says the picture of Teotihuacan that emerges is a classic picture of positive feedback. Feedback means retroalimentación. So it's like, basically Teotihuacan is an example of positive feedback, a good feedback among all of these things, all of these elements, all of these aspects of the city. So it's like there was a positive feedback, una retroalimentación positiva among obsidian mining and working, trade, population growth, irrigation, religious tourism. So basically what this means is that every factor that led to the development of Teotihuacan wasn't working on its own. Every factor had a positive influence on everything. So obsidian mining had a positive effect on working or on trade or population growth. Then irrigation had a positive effect on religion. So everything was connected and everything had a positive influence on everything. And that is what, as you guys said, that is what made Teotihuacan increase its wealth and also have more power and wealth, right? More power and wealth. That is the main idea of this text, because as you guys can see, then they start talking about thriving obsidian operation, and they say that this thriving obsidian operation had a positive influence on miners, right? Because they needed more miners for this operation. And that meant that they needed more obsidian tools, and that meant that they needed more traders, and that attracted more immigrants. So the population was growing, and that gave more power to the elite, and that served as addition to labor force. And that basically led to more irrigation works. And that led finally to more power and wealth for the elite. So everything was connected, like a change of events. So that is the main idea, right? Once that you guys find that main idea, as I was telling you, you're halfway done. Why? Because you need to understand one very important concept in writing and in reading. And when you read a text or when you write a text, each paragraph contains one single idea, focuses on one only idea. It's like a unity. This paragraph only focuses on the idea. So every single thing that you can find in the paragraph, including every single word, every single comma and period and example and quote, every phrase and everything that's here is going to somehow contribute to that main idea. Maybe in different ways, but it's always going to be contributing to that main idea. So the reason why the author talks about this thriving obsidian operation has to be in order to support that main idea that the picture of Teotihuacan was this classic picture of positive feedback. So what you guys need to do now is read the options and look for the one that contains the main idea as the object of the sentence in the options. The only one that talks about the same idea is option C, because it says, illustrate how several factors influenced each other to make Teotihuacan a powerful and wealthy city. That's the main idea, right? Because all of these factors, mining, working, trade, population growth, influenced each other to make Teotihuacan a powerful and wealthy city. Now, another thing that you guys can do to kind of maybe eliminate a few options is also take a look at the way, ask yourself. So I know that this thriving obsidian operation has to be supporting the main idea, but you can ask yourselves how? How does it contribute to that main idea? Is it a piece of evidence? Is it a contrast? Is it an example? Is it, I don't know, it can be many different things. So in this case, you guys probably noticed that it says, for example, right? So this thriving obsidian operation is an example of what? Of the positive feedback among all of those factors. So how does this thriving obsidian operation contribute to the text? Because it's an example of the main idea of this text. So you look for the verbs. If you guys noticed, all of the answer choices consist in a verb and then an object. So if you look for the verbs, you have explain why, give an example of, illustrate how, explain how. The only verbs that basically mean examples are options B and C, because they say give an example, that's an example, or illustrate. An illustration is an example. So if you look at the verbs, it can only be option B or C, but the only one that contains the correct idea is option C, because it is an example of how these factors influence each other to make the organic powerful city. Right, so that is basically the way to go on these questions. You need to always understand the main idea of the text, and then you can ask yourself how these specific things you're asking for contributes to that main idea. Okay, guys, and if you have the correct verb and the correct object, you have the correct choice. Is that okay?
Yes, miss.
Okay, guys. So those are purpose questions. Now I'll ask you guys to do another one for this one to practice. In this text, we only had one purpose question, which was the 8th one, right? The one that we just answered. But there's only one of them. So I can't really give you another one from the same text for you to practice. So I want you guys to answer this other question, which is about a text related to Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Hey guys, this was about Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. So maybe, Rosario, can you please read the question?
Okay, in paragraph 4, what was the author's purpose of including a quote that the belief that the complexity of the human eye could have been informed by natural selection seems highly unlikely?
Okay, thank you, Rosario. So I want you guys to please screenshot this because I have the text in a different slide. So please screenshot this question. Okay, guys. And here's the text. So I want you to try to answer the question and tell me what you think. Okay, I'll give you guys 2 minutes to do this. Okay, guys, so what do you think?
Probably the letter B, miss, to prove that a natural selection contradicts the basis of Darwin theory of evolution.
Okay, maybe. Do you guys agree that it's B? So what's the main idea in this text, in this paragraph?
I understand that the Darwin has a theory, and this theory is probably contradicts. It was contradicted of other theory that from I don't know, from new science, and that's the reason why Darwin says a quote that it's this unlikely for him.
Okay, so now the natural selection contradicts the basis of Darwin's theory. Now, if we start reading, it says Darwin's theory is that selective breeding occurs in nature as natural selection is the engine behind evolution. So actually, Darwin's theory, natural selection is Darwin's theory, right? So how can natural selection contradict the basis of Darwin's theory if natural selection is the basis of Darwin's theory?
Maybe is the option D.
Yes, that makes sense, because if we continue reading, they say thus, the theory provides an excellent basis for understanding how organisms change over time. Nevertheless, it is just a theory and elusively difficult to prove. That is definitely the main idea in the text, because this is not an idea, right? This is just an explanation. So what is Darwin's theory? Darwin's theory is that freedom occurs in nature. And this theory, they say that provides an excellent basis for understanding how organisms change over time. But then they have this contrasting word and they say, however, nevertheless, this is just a theory and it's elusively difficult. And then if you guys noticed, they say one of the major holes in Darwin's theory revolves around irreducibly complex systems. And everything now is about these irreducibly complex systems, right? But the question is, why does the author talk about these irreducibly complex systems? Because it's a hole in Darwin's theory. And why does the author talk about a hole in Darwin's theory? Because he is trying to support the idea that it's just a theory and that it's difficult to prove because it has holes, right? There are shortcomings in the theory. And one of those holes, one of its shortcomings, revolves around these irreducibly complex systems. So everything here is trying to support the idea that Darwin's theory, even though it's an excellent basis for understanding how organisms change, is just a theory and it's elusively difficult to prove. Right? So that is the main idea. And everything here is gonna support that main idea. Everything that they mention about these irreducibly complex systems is to prove that it's just a theory, that it has its holes. And then they include this quote. They say, as Darwin himself admitted, to suppose that the eye without inevitable contrivance for adjusting to focus for different instances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration could have been formed by natural selection seems, I free confess, absurd in the highest degree. So basically, he himself admitted one of the holes in his theory. He says, yes, I admit that to suppose that the eye was formed by natural selection seems absurd. So that's one of the holes in his theory, and he himself admitted that. So the reason why the author includes this quote is to support that idea, right? That this is just a theory, it has holes and it's difficult to prove. And in that case, as you guys said, it will have to be option D. Right, so the most important thing is to always understand very well the main idea of the paragraph. If you guys have that main idea, then everything becomes easier. Is that okay? Do you all see why option D would be the correct choice?
Yes.
Guys, any questions? Okay. So we're gonna do one more. These are called paraphrase questions. And as the name says, they're gonna ask you to paraphrase a sentence. So they want you to restate a sentence, choose an option that is saying the same as the original sentence, but in different words. Just a paraphrase of a specific sentence in the text. Obviously, the important thing is not the words or the order of the words. The important thing is the meaning or the purpose of the sentence. So, how do you know that you're dealing with one of these questions? Because it's always phrased in this way. Which sentence is closest or is most similar to the following sentence from paragraph 1? And this is the original sentence. It's about the theory of evolution as well. This theory is Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. So I want you guys to try to answer the question. You're gonna choose one of the options that you feel is the most similar to the original one. And then we'll see which one actually is, and we'll see how to answer this question. Okay, guys? So I'll give you some seconds. Let me know what you think. Okay, guys. So, what do you think?
The letter A, Miss, the theory of evolution is founded on evidence that non-organic compounds are the basis of life developed in an unguided way.
I say option C.
Else? So in this case, there's one very good tip. Well, the thing that you technically have to do is always understand as usual the main idea of the original sentence. What is this sentence trying to say? What is this sentence trying to explain? Basically, this sentence answers the question, what is the theory of evolution based on? That is the question that the sentence answers, right? That is what they are trying to explain, what the theory is based on. Because they say the theory is based on the assumptions that life developed from non-life and progressed and evolved in an indirect or in an evolved, in an indirect manner. That's the main idea, right? To explain what this theory is based on. Now, one very good way or very simple way of looking at this is if you guys look for the main verb in the sentence, then everything becomes easier. What is the main verb in this sentence, in the original sentence?
What was the question, Miss? The main
What is-
idea of the sentence?
The main verb
Ah, okay.
in the sentence.
Is based.
Based.
That's the verb. It's in the passive voice, but the main verb is based on, that's the main verb, is based. So I want you all to, when you have these questions, look for the main verb in the sentence. And I guarantee that most of the time, the correct answer is always going to have the same main verb or a synonym of the main verb. Because the main verb most of the time contains the main idea. So the main idea was to show what the theory is based on, right? So that always contains the main idea. So if we look at the options, the only one that has the same verb is option A, because it says is founded on. What's the purpose of option A? What's the main idea of option A? Same purpose as the original sentence, to show what the theory is founded on. Founded on is the same as is based on, right? So it's a synonym of the main verb. Now, obviously, there are going to be some things that are a little bit different. Maybe maybe your option is going to be some details, some examples. Maybe it's going to have some not so close synonyms. For example, in this case, the biggest thing that maybe probably made you doubt was the original sentence says that it's based on assumptions, and the one here says that it's based on evidence, right? But at the end of the day, we're not looking for the exact same thing. We're looking for the most similar among them all. And option A is the most similar one because it explains what the theory is based on. And what is it based on? It's on the assumptions, on the evidence, the idea that life developed from non-life. Basically, it's the same as saying that non-organic compounds are the basis of life. Life developed, or the basis of life, is non-organic compounds, which is non-life, and it progressed and evolved in an indirect manner. It developed is the same as progressed and evolved. In an unguided is the same as indirect, way is the same as manner. Right? So yes, option A is the correct one. Now, option C, I can totally see why some of you guys could think that option C was the correct one. It makes sense. But the approach of the question of the sentence is different. The idea of the sentence is different. Option C is not trying to explain what the theory is based on. Option C is trying to show or to explain in which cases, under what condition, Charles Darwin's theory would hold true. This is the main verb, hold true. So option C is trying to show under what conditions Charles Darwin's theory would hold true, not the basis of Charles Darwin's theory, right? Because it's a conditional sentence. It says, if we assume this and this and that, his theory holds true. So the main verb is hold, and we're not looking at, the idea is not to show when his theory will hold true, but what the theory is based on, right? So that is the reason why C is not correct, neither it's B, because B talks about when we can prove evolution occurs. This is not about proving anything. And option D talks about whether it's hard or not to make assumptions. And again, that's not the idea, right? It's not about how hard it is to make assumptions. It's about what this theory is based on. So it's not option D either. Okay, guys? So that's how I suggest that you approach this question. Understand the main idea, look for the main verb, and look for an option that contains the same verb or a synonym of the verb and contains the same idea. And that's how you'll get to the correct choice. Okay, guys, go beyond the words, look for the ideas. Is that okay? Any questions about this one?
But in this case, assumption and evidence are not positive things, because assumption is like a supposition, right? And evidence is something that is true.
Yes, I mean, they're not opposite necessarily. I do agree that they're not the same. But again, we're not looking for something that's exactly saying the same, right? We're looking just for the most similar one. And yes, it's true that assumptions and evidence are not the same. Evidence is something stronger. Evidence means that like there are objective things that support the theory, and assumptions is just suppositions, as you said, right? Like more theories. But at the end of the day, the important thing is that this theory is based on the idea of life developed from non-life. It doesn't really matter whether that idea is an assumption or a hard truth. But the important thing is, again, the main idea. And I know that it's the same, but if we compare it to the other ones, then it would be the closest one in terms of the idea as a whole.
Okay.
Yes. Any other question? Okay, guys, so please, before you go, don't go yet. Today we really have to fill out 2 surveys. I'm sending you all the first. And when you guys are done, I'll send the other one as well. So I'd really appreciate if you can fill that out for me before you go. Okay, that was fast. I'm sending the other one out too. And that will be it for today's session. I will see you guys tomorrow. We'll continue working on other questions. Hey guys, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you, miss.
Okay, thank you.
Good night, Miss.